when I look at some of the opportunities in our country right now, is that people come here that are, when they're first to America, whether they're a refugee, they're fleeing something where they had to leave their home versus someone coming who's an immigrant who is leaving a situation for a better opportunity. In either case, welcoming them in, letting them know that we have a job for them at Tzatziki's because we really see the value in diversity.
Welcome to the Let's Give a Damn podcast. I'm your host, Nick Lapara, and as always, we're bringing you the stories of people who saw something wrong in the world and gave a damn about it. My guest today is Dan Simpson, the CEO of Tzatziki's and an all-around badass, damn-giving human. For those of you who don't know what Tzatziki's is, by the end of this episode, you're going to wish you had one nearby, I promise. It's amazing, fast casual Mediterranean food. 92 locations in a dozen or so states so far, and they're growing like crazy, over 2,000 employees. In our chat, we talk about caring for the environment, fresh food, the importance of fostering community over meals, their HOPE program, which is amazing by the way, and the ways in which they are giving a damn by hiring veterans, refugees, and other often marginalized groups of people. You're going to love this chat, my friends. Dan is an entirely delightful and passionate human. Before we begin, a shout out to our sponsor. Today's episode is being brought to you in part by The Russell. The Russell is a historic East Nashville church transformed into a one-of-a-kind boutique hotel. The Russell's mission is to give back to the Nashville community through their Rooms for Rooms program by donating a portion of your stay to local organizations who provide a safe haven for those in need in the Nashville community. It's an absolutely beautiful hotel with an incredible mission. If you're ever in the Nashville area, consider staying there. Visit russellnashville.com to book your experience today. Okay, ready, friends? Here's my conversation with the CEO of Tzatziki's, Dan Simpson. Dan Simpson, what's up?
Man, it's great. We just met and loving the conversation we're already having. Great to be here.
Yes, so excited for you to be here. We have known each other for a whole week now.
We go way back.
But it's been a wonderful week. We had lunch last week. Really, I think hit it off, connected on a bunch of different levels. We have similar stories in so many ways. We're similar. We are the same Enneagram number. We're very similar, even though we've taken a little bit of a different career path. I'm excited to learn more about your work today because I know a little bit, but these people don't know. And I think your story is compelling. The work that you're doing is compelling, but I also think that we can learn from your business experience as well, which is something that I think a lot of people in the give a damn space, whether it's nonprofit work or volunteering or whatever, we don't have a good business mind going into it. We make bad decisions. We don't prioritize how to do things, and then we're too stressed out because there's not enough money to go around, and there's not enough this and there's not enough that. I spent 13 years in the nonprofit world, and it was beg, borrow, and steal the whole time. I mean, these weren't my organizations. I helped run organizations, but that was partly my responsibility to come up with the funds to budget properly, and it was literally beg, borrow, and steal for over a decade. Partly why I left, because I was like, there's got to be a better way. I got to learn.
Right.
What's the better way? So
that's like, what's the no margin, no mission. So yeah, it's been fun to figure out how do you take a big heart and intentional life and then layer on sustainability, layer on a way to sort of like propel it forward. And so yeah, we'll talk about it, but sort of navigated my life and career so far to figure out how do I find the balance between those different themes, those different priorities.
Remember that, friends. No margin, no mission. That's the whole ball game right there. It really is. Yeah. So you are, before we get into the work that you're doing, let's begin with finding out who you are. Who are you? Whatever I say when I say that, like talk about it. That could be your people, your place, your work, where you came from, where you're going. Who are you?
Yeah, so I think immediately about like the genesis of the story. Born in Philadelphia, still a big Eagles fan. That was
Is that disappointing?
Yeah, well, last night it was.
Yes, it was. I saw the tweets during the Emmys. It was Emmys tweets and it was Eagles fans.
Oh, my kids were freaking out, not in a good way. But it's such a place of belonging, and there's so many memories. And you ride, when you're a fan, you ride with the ups and the downs. And winning the Super Bowl was an amazing experience. So yeah, sometimes you got some losses, and it was a fun game. But So yeah, being born in Philly and such a stigma about these like, negative Philly fans. But man, this is a city of brotherly love. That's the sector of the city I come from,
I love
apparently.
Philly.
Yeah.
I love Philly. I
Beautiful
really do.
town, Parisian layout. But yeah, there's a lot of passion there. So that's kind of the Philly I hail from. But grew up in Maine. And it's interesting because I think like, my mom's a nurse, my dad was a cop, and they sort of like fled to find a better life. And we found 40 acres and grew up on an apple orchard. And
Wow.
my parents tried their hands at all kinds of farming. And so I had this sort of ag farming sort of background. But also like living in Maine is like, it's a beautiful place, but it's a gritty place. Like you work hard, it's hard winters, firewood, as I mentioned, gardens. So like I came out of my childhood definitely with this sort of like, I don't know, this balance of like, all right, I'm from this sort of inner city Philly, and I'm also from this nowhere Maine, kind of gritty background before I jumped off into college. And some parts and pieces of that, plus my mom's big heart as a nurse, those are sort of like the early formative pieces that sort of like sent me into the world.
Did you go to the big city right after that? Or like, yeah, did you want to like get away from rural living
Yeah.
or no more farming for me? Or what was kind of, yeah, what were you working through
Yeah,
there?
so I wanted to spread my wings and get away. It's the middle of 5 kids. So also like we all play this role in our family of origin, our birth order, et cetera. And so for me it was, hey, I kept everybody together. I got to sort of lighten the mood. I sort of helped navigate through this childhood experience of my parents trying to figure out their own selves and their own marriage. And that wasn't going so well and ended up in divorce. And so like I was already picking up on a lot of those challenges early on and trying to keep this be as fun as experience. But inside, I was ready at 17 to I wanted to get out. I think the other thing too is one of the charming things about rural places and true of Maine is you when it's a hard environment, you stick together. And so people, you get your car stuck in a ditch and someone comes and pulls you out. That sort of togetherness living all the time makes people also kind of closed. And so like most of the other people that I went to high school with like married each other and they stayed in those small towns.
Yep,
And
yep.
I was always, hey, because of being born in Philly, I always knew the world was a big place and I wanted to go see this world. And so as far as I could, see at that point was Clearwater, Florida. So I went to undergrad. I went far away from Maine. It was warm, not cold. It was beaches, not woods. And I wanted to go kind of spread my wings and see what the world looked like.
Take me on the journey between 17, 18, getting the hell out of Maine and now. So how did you
Yeah.
decide what you wanted to work on, what you wanted to do? What was that sort of journey like?
Yeah, so probably two different layers. So
Sure.
one is like internal, the other one would be more professional. So the internal part is I, like most people, went on this sort of introspective, trying to figure out, you asked me before, like, who am I? I went on this introspective sort of journey. I think going from these 3 different geographical places was just sort of telling to help me sort of like see the world through different eyes and different cultures. I also, my parents got divorced, and that really kind of blew up one of the big institutions in my mind of sort of what I thought was, what made the ground steady beneath my feet. And so when that eroded, and it made me question, everything from faith and politics and direction for my life. And that was really hard. I also was I was pre-med biology major, a major that was not of my choosing, but my father's. So now here I am, and I'm partway through a degree that I graduated with that wasn't even really necessarily me. And it turned out really not me. And I was grateful because I learned so much and I'm a curious guy. So
Sure.
that kept me going through it. But I was actually going to go to med school, and I talked to a family doctor, and he's like, you know what, you are creative, and you are people centered. And he said, healthcare is a hard space to go into right now. So maybe if you're going to do healthcare, you already have this degree, maybe go into the business side. So I was playing in a band, so I had this creative side. Grew up in my family was also pretty musical growing up. Everyone played piano and guitar and sang.
Did you guys have like a family band?
Well,
not
yeah,
quite?
not quite the Partridge Family,
Yeah.
but like we'd sing in church, and we'd again
Have a little campfire, sing along.
little campfire, sing along, and so I had this like creative musical side, and then I happened to have this biology degree. Participated in a few healthcare startups when I was in college, and that was just minimum wage, pay some bills, pay my way through college at that point after my parents split up. And so I started to figure out like, okay, so really maybe I can use this creative part of me to do this sort of marketing business development is sort of the roles I ended up in just because those companies didn't have that. So the universe started to open up these sort of pathways for me like, okay, I can make some connections here. Since my family unit sort of split apart, I'm going to try to see if I can salvage that by reaching out to them individually and figure that out. But I'm also going to start asking the question like, who are my people? And I started to realize like, I want to be with people that are not judgmental. A little bit different than what I grew up with. I want to be with people that are really curious and love to learn, have a growth mindset. I want to be with people that pay attention to their community around them and want to help and make a difference, that pay attention to sort of the least of these in their communities. I also wanted to do things that were exciting and big. Like I definitely had a big dose of idealism. I wanted to change the world. I didn't know how to do that because I was broke and coming from a broken family. So a lot was broken. Didn't have any money, making minimum wage, which, man, that was not a lot back then. Hasn't really changed that much in all these years.
Wild.
Yeah, crazy, right? And so I had a big heart and sort of big aspirations and didn't know where that was going to take me. And playing in a band, doing these startup companies, and then met who turned out to be my wife, and decided to move to the one place where healthcare and music was happening, which was Nashville, Tennessee. That got me this far. And from there, it was a few more healthcare companies, really kind of leaned into healthcare, ended up sort of lucking out with this one company called AIM Healthcare, where you had to start at the bottom. And I was promoted very quickly, mostly because why? I asked a lot of questions. I was curious. I was ambitious. Happened to be the right time, right place. And I ended up doing multi-million-dollar deals, brokering them. I'm in the deep end of the pool. I really don't know what I'm doing other than I'd ask lots of questions, be curious, and be ambitious, and it worked. And so I was having a great time until something really important happened, which was I realized that I was missing something in my soul, that I was making good money and I was finding like respect and utility, but I'd slipped a little bit away from mission in my work. And I had the insight of, I want to figure out a way to do meaningful work. If you get one life and you get agency, the volition to choose your life, I wanted to find a way to apply all my energy, and I have a lot of it still, and creativity towards something that felt like it mattered more. And so though grateful for the experience I had, grateful for the opportunities, but I jumped from there to go join a nonprofit for 4 years and called the Dispensary of Hope in Nashville. And that was what it was all about for me. It was like, I'm going to leap into missional work. And I thought at the time that if it was a 501c3, if you had that particular tax status, that would, you're moving out of the evil empire into the world of good, And I learned for sure along the way that there's, it's not quite that simple. That's where I learned no margin, no mission.
What years were you in the nonprofit world for, those 4 years?
Let's see. This is probably about 8 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago.
So 11 to 15, 11 to 14 or something like that, you're there. Yeah, talk about that transition, because you went from the business world, right? You're thinking, okay, this is evil. I need to do something good with my life, so let me leave that and go. Obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. I assume there was pay cuts and, it was just a downsizing of life to be able to do this amazing mission, right?
Yeah.
How long did that last? How long did that sort of, now I'm doing the good work, now I'm doing the real work, before you realized, well, for one, the nonprofit world is not so pure. Yeah. There are a lot of bad people running nonprofits. There's a lot of bad work being done, a lot of money, time, energy being wasted. And then you have, it's kind of like these smaller companies, these smaller organizations that aren't the big ones, aren't the ones that are raking in the dollars. And they're doing the great work. They're doing the awesome work. And they are just begging, borrowing, and stealing for everything that they have. And it's a weird world, right? So how long did that last before you're like, oh, this is also sort of messed up as well?
Yeah, where the shiny object became a little less shiny. Yeah. It probably took me about almost 2 years, honestly, because we started with this grand vision. And it was that this was, pre the Affordable Care Act, pre-Obamacare, and we were looking at a world, again, I'm coming from healthcare, so looking at a world where healthcare coverage is really vacant in our country, and we have more than 10 million people that are not covered. And one of the byproducts of that was they also couldn't afford prescription drugs. Now, again, I grew up in this family where we ate healthy and we worked hard, and that, and my mom's a nurse, but like natural remedies are really preferred over medication for everything. But the
Yep.
reality is there's a lot of diseases that a medication prescription drug is the right answer, or at least part of a larger care solution. And so looking at just people that just simply couldn't afford that was a real problem. So that's on one side. You have this big need and really a lack of hope because the government couldn't get their act together and the private sector couldn't get their act together. So what are you going to do? On the other side, what we discovered was that the prescription drug companies, because of the way the FDA required them to produce drugs in batches, they would always end up with just a little bit extra that they knew would be more than what they could sell. Their supply was greater than the demand. And what happened to that extra? Well, by that time, it was being burned in incinerators because once it expired, they had to dispose of it in a safe way, although not a very environmentally good way.
No.
And if you look at it in the bigger picture, on one hand, you have all this waste, and on the other hand, you have this need. So the premise of the company was that we would like 0% waste, 100% hope. Is if you could connect these two things together. Now, that was a huge, ambitious goal.
Yeah.
It was just big enough to keep us all really engaged, a small group that came together from different sectors. And we had really an A team having a lot of fun to figure this out. And so it started to work. Started by bringing in both brand and generic drug companies to the table and say, why don't you make a planned donation instead of waiting until it's close to expiration? On the flip side, a lot of what I spent my time on was building this network of dispensing sites. This would be charitable pharmacies and charitable clinics that were actually the last mile interacting with people in the communities. So to your point, when I went out and started to do that work, and I'm traveling to New Orleans, and I'm traveling to Minneapolis, and I'm traveling to all over the country, I would go to these communities and bring together these people that were doing the same work but had never met together, or in some cases were warring with each other. And it'd be a nun from the Catholic clinic on one corner, and it'd be the hospital pharmacist on another corner, and it'd be the Baptist church that had a little clinic in the basement of their church on this corner. And we would bring them all together. And what I found out quickly was they were territorial. They felt so passionate about their own personal calling and mission that this idea of collaborating to solve the problem together became a real barrier to achieving what we were trying to help them with. We said, basically, we could help you do this, but you guys need to come together to create one dispensing site for this to work. And I was dismayed by how, no, it's more important that we maintain our own separate missions that, by the way, are all dying on the vine, completely unsustainable, in many cases not safe. But they felt so called to it that was bigger than excellence or collaboration. And to me, you got to put the purpose and the why and the mission above everything, above your own person, above your own budget. You know, in that scenario, if you really want to focus on it. And so I ended up, playing this Henry Kissinger role of trying to bring people together and leveraging diplomacy to help them see that right now you help 100 people. If you guys join forces, this is like 10x. And so when you look at that, look what you could do together. So I learned a lot about the power of collaboration. In some cities, we pulled it off. In other cities, they were just too entrenched. So that was the part that really kind of blew my mind. I didn't expect it. And I just thought that they were so committed to mission. And in many cases, they were just really committed to their own mission versus the mission with a capital T. So that was really eye-opening. I also learned in that experience, like you still have, no matter what you do, is similar challenges. You got to have funding. And so we started by getting grants, and we had some seed funding. And then we tried to figure out a sustainable model. So the idea of a social enterprise. What if you had a self-sustaining model where you charge a subscription? Well, that wasn't very well received. And because now you're charging money, and does that go in alignment with your mission? Great book, one of my favorites, Conscious Capitalism.
Love it.
Lays out this amazing way to look at how to do good in the world in a sustainable way.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so that I left there, with my heart was just as full with how much good could be done and all these people that genuinely cared around the country. But the models and the frameworks in many cases were broken and really set up for people to compete with each other that should be allies. I also learned, things like there's a lot of bad processes. And though I didn't start as a technologist, in my healthcare companies, every time we ended up solving a problem with technology, We'd start in manual auditing or some other function and end up leveraging technology to make the process better. Even in the nonprofit, in Dispensary of Hope, which you should check out online, is today it's thriving and still
That's
serving
awesome. I
people
was going to
across
ask
the
if it's
country.
still going.
Yeah, great. And some of my dearest friends just had lunch with Scott Cornwell, who's their chief supply chain guy and great human being. And it's still doing a lot of good in the world. But like we leaned into technology there because we realized in order to make this whole thing work and work efficiently, we weren't just going to say, well, do our best and let God do the rest. We weren't going to just say, this is a bad process because it's a great mission. No, that's a terrible way of thinking. How do we bring excellence to this work that we wanted to do? So we leaned a lot in technology. So between those different experiences, I ended up really seeing how technology is not an end into itself, but really a great tool to solve real problems, which led to my eventual exit from the Dispensary of Hope and going to launch a technology company.
Before we get to that,
Yeah.
I love that point you just made regarding technology. I've been thinking a lot about that idea the last few days because I just finished the 3-part Bill Gates Netflix
On
thing.
Netflix, I just saw that. I haven't seen it yet, but I just
won't-
noticed it the other day.
I won't say anything because I'll say one thing.
Spoiler alert.
I'll say one thing only because he has said this many times. But in it, the interviewer asks him like, do you think, essentially the question was, do you think we can solve everything? Like, do you think technology can solve everything? And he's like, his answer was essentially, again, paraphrased, I could be wrong, but I do believe that. And that's the first question I'm going to ask when I face any question, when I face any issue, is can technology fix this? And we're in a beautiful time in history. Well, the first time in history, but it's beautiful that we can leverage these amazing tools. We can leverage technology to fix some things that haven't been able to fix in the past, and that we haven't been able to address. So, what was the transition then? You're realizing this about technology, and what was the transition? Was it a good exit out of there and into this new thing? And what was this new thing that you were doing? And I assume that's like right before Taziki's, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, it felt abrupt, I think, to me and to many others too, because it was like, wait a minute, you had this series of healthcare startups and then sort of found your way into this big healthcare company and were really kind of made it. And then you jump off this cliff and go to this startup for 4 years that's in healthcare, but in the pharmaceutical side, you end up doing, a lot of technology and then jump to this technology company. So like it's oftentimes that you can understand your life a little bit better if you're standing on the other side and look back and look for that common thread. And for me, everything I had done to that point again really stems back to life is about people. And I really, really, really wanted to stay a person who had and was developing a more and more open heart that was doing good in the world in a small way. I don't mean small, I mean in a close proximity way, but also, if possible, in a larger proximity way. And so my heart has always been chasing those opportunities. And then I think as I got into it, I realized, again, the sustainability that if you're going to do it with excellence and do it in a way that it can last. And that requires it to be financially stable. So the tax exempt doesn't make something good and for-profit doesn't make it bad. That's really about your own heart that you bring into your work. What is your intention in your work? If profit is your only motivation instead of profit being an outcome, like conscious capitalism talks about, like make your why your purpose. That's the driver, the thing that pushes you to get up every day and do your thing. And profit is one of the outcomes that you get to create. And then I think my pragmatic side kicked in along the way because I realized like, this is the whole, I love not only ideas, but also love making things better. So process improvement and the technology became a way to facilitate doing these bigger things. And so I think I was just sort of like taking some stepping stones, building some tools in my toolbox that all matter and sort of have led me to what I'm doing now. And I felt freedom for some reason to not like go get a career job and stay at this one company because that's the way I'm going to get a good pension, but more like life is a series of adventures and look at these stepping stones and like get into one and it will teach you the people you don't want to work with. The next time you get to choose, you'll say, I'll be more choosy about I really am most alive when I work with these kinds of people. And do one because it gives you a chance to live deeply out of your heart and do the next one because it grounds you deeply in finance and business. And so for me, it's been a series of things that all have sort of been collecting a toolbox and doing some good along the way, but learning lessons along every step of the way. So jumping into a technology company, we started with a variety of different ideas, but this was with like some of my closest friends. This was very much the step on my path of I want to choose who I do my work with, not necessarily what it is, but who it is. So I love the people I was working with. Technology was something, again, that I was evolving into and really wanted to lean into. And then we had some other grand ideas. We wanted to advance health and nutrition with some of our past healthcare contacts through a rewards program. And what I learned very quickly was, as it imploded, was that just because your heart intent is right and because there is a real opportunity, it may not work. It may be too early. It might be too late. And so then you have to be pragmatic and pivot. And so 5 pivots later, we end up with To Go Technologies with it, which is using this technology platform we built that went from nutrition to grocery stores to food trucks to you name it, we did it, and ended up building a mobile ordering app for restaurants. Again, this was never in the master plan and certainly not on my bucket list, but sort of where we landed to be good stewards of the money we raised, and being a co-founder and CEO of what ended up being, again, a mobile app company for restaurants. And that was my unexpected foray into the hospitality restaurant space.
Is that company still going?
Yeah, it's going and thriving. My friend Sean Schenkel is the CEO. He was one of the guys that we built the company with. And that was really my bridge into, in Nashville, met Mike Bodner, who is a restaurant veteran, and he ended up, he ended up teaching me a lot, and I loved the way he did business. Again, going into restaurants wasn't on my my bucket list, but when I looked at the way he did business, and a little about him is he worked with Dave Thomas at Wendy's for years.
Sure.
He built technology, some of the first technology in restaurants. Again, a process improver. So he and I were kindred in that way. And he also not only had big visions, like he says, never does one of anything, always does things big, but also had this unexpected surprise and delight about him, because though he was wealthy and was building this empire, he could have built it all for himself, but along the way he kept saying, I don't want to hire employees, I want to have partners. And so he would make people equity holders and owners of the different restaurant groups and restaurants. He would basically take some of what could have been only his wealth, and when people invested into the business, he would invest back in them and give them opportunity to be an owner. And I didn't see that generosity in most other businesses, period, let alone in the restaurant space. And I knew they didn't have to do this. And so I knew he wanted to do it out of some part of his heart that recognized it was paying it forward. He knew he was changing people's lives. And I love that about him, still do. And I realized, okay, there is an amazing capacity to do good in the hospitality space. First and foremost is that every day you get to create a plate of food and you get to present it to someone and either bring people together, lighten their mood, lighten their moment, brighten their day. And then there's secondary part is you get to change people's lives by the people you hire.
Yep.
And so I realized, man, there's a lot of opportunities here, particularly because the restaurant space was ripe for technology innovation and needed innovation creativity, which was something that I love doing. And there was this potential for it to have great heart. And so I realized suddenly I kind of felt at home there. And so ended up going to work with Mike.
Let's talk about what you just said about food, hospitality. Then we'll get into tzatziki's. I love cooking. I'm pretty damn good at it, actually. I think my family thinks so. The people that we throw parties for think so. It's
unanimous. Everybody thinks you're good at cooking. This is good.
Most days, I really am. It's so funny. Like, there's nights that I'm one of 12 kids, and I was the one that I'm the second oldest, so I had a lot of responsibility anyway. But my mom obviously had to come up with feasts every day to feed 12 growing kids. And I was the one kid, even at 9, 10, 11, 12, I was interested. I would go in there and help her. And then it got to the point when I was 13 or 14 that she would say, you just want to do the whole thing because you're kind of taken over anyway. I'm a fairly strong personality, and she's amazing and kind and virtually sinless, which means she just didn't want to, she just let me kind of mow her over with my direction and the thing that I wanted to do. And so then I was cooking full meals. And so, there's days when we have we'll have game nights at our house, right? And they'll last until 12, 1, 2 in the morning. We're 4 bowls of hookah into the night and, drinks scattered all around. And then
It's just like Monopoly. What are we playing here?
we're
What's
talking
our game night?
Settlers of Catan,
Oh, excellent choice.
Carcassonne,
And you can get, I know,
different.
we can get lost in our family for hours doing that too.
Yeah. We're just all of a sudden it's like, oh, and then everybody gets their fourth meal, right? Their Taco Bell fourth meal on. And so then it's like, Nick, will you go make us some food? And so I'll go into the kitchen at 2 a.m, cook up another feast for everybody. I just love it. So I love cooking food. And what's so special about it is that everybody, people you agree with, people you disagree with, people you like, people you don't like, everybody needs to eat.
Right.
And everybody wants to eat well. They love good food. They know what it tastes like. Even though most people, I think, settle for sort of mediocre food. I think if you put something, if the same person that eats out at, eats hamburgers every day, if you serve them a really great meal, something from Tzatziki's, a great vegetable gyro, they're going to notice the quality. They're going to notice something different, right? And so food's super important. When did you develop? Was it during this time, or were there previous times in your life when you had really seen the importance of whether it was in your family, you and your wife, whatever, like seeing the importance of food, bringing people together for meals, and just the importance of serving quality food?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a combination of things. Some things that maybe I didn't even pay attention to until later as I reflected back on this. But
Sure.
So like my grandfather was a chef, a cook in the Navy, and then became a chef in the Philadelphia area. And I remember the few memories I have of him before he passed on was him, raking and me, little Danny, holding on to the little rake in the Pocono Mountains where he retired to, and him always having big gardens. And then I remember my grandmother, every time we'd go visit them in the Poconos, she, everything is scratch-made pies and food from their garden. It was just sort of a given. It wasn't a novelty. It wasn't a trend. It wasn't cool. It was just, of course, what you did. Then again, growing up in Maine, now this is more out of necessity. 5 kids, and we're living in rural Maine. My mom's working full time, and we're living off the land. And so we had ever increasing gardens, which meant lots of work for us as kids. And but we canned and we ate from our garden year round. And so to me, it was sort of part of what the earth is for. You invest some time in it, you take care of that soil, and it gives you back year over year over year sustenance for your life, and not just sustenance but flavor, right? Except for that really bad patch of pickles that my dad made, which is a totally different story.
Sometimes it can go bad.
Yeah, right. But so, and then, cut to I get married, and my wife, Kim, and she is, whatever my sort of baseline of paying attention to, how we take care of the earth and plants and animals, and how then that combines into sustenance for us, and how that turns into a meal. She took it to the next level, and now we have raised bed boxes in our backyard, and we teach our kids about gardening. We harvest from there year round. So hoop house for lettuces throughout the year.
Wow.
And then composting, and that lends itself into recycling. And all of this is very connected about, again, it's a lot about, if you don't take care of the soil will not take care of you. And so you really got to pay attention to the depletion of nutrients from soil. And so try to you can see the whole life cycle just in our little Nashville city house and backyard. You can still see all that happens on a big farm. What an amazing! I'm sure. Did you see the documentary, The Biggest Little Farm?
No.
Oh my goodness, it's amazing. Everyone listening should go watch on Netflix.
Is it on Netflix? Okay.
Yeah, The Biggest Little Farm, and it's really amazing cinematography, as you would expect, but a beautiful story, and you will learn so much about agriculture and just about our connection to it. It's a really amazing narrative to pay attention to.
I'm in.
So like from that, my wife, I marry into this family where my mother-in-law, then my wife, by her own marriage, like amazing cook, so curious about, and so I eat so well, right? Like you, I'm much more of the sous chef. I can chop with the best of them, and I'm eager and happy to help. So I'll pour a glass of wine for my wife, and she's usually leading the way. I'm cooking like one time a week, but we all my kids, we all love to cook.
It's a
so
family
gardening,
affair.
cooking, is all kind of goes together. I think for me, it's more than even the culinary part. It really goes back to this idea of, I think since I was a little boy, I've always paid attention to, everybody wants to be loved and doesn't quite have enough. everybody's a little bit lonely. And everybody's now busy and distracted. So even our pathways to connect with each other are sort of muted and numbed. And you can go a lot of days and a lot of weeks and not have real connection to another human being. And what I saw was the best moments were when we could slow down long enough to say, hey man, you want to grab a cup of coffee? Because those moments interrupt the pace of life. And then you sit down and you end up being eyeball to eyeball with another person. And you have surface conversation, which sometimes leads into where you really are, how you really feel, what's really going on. And sometimes if it's a trusted friend and this is the third, fourth, or fifth coffee, or you and I have just second time, then you can go deep with some people and you can form a real deep connection. It's amazing how often that happens because, or at least aided by, the fact that there's a beverage shared. There's a plate of food, an appetizer. There's 2 beers and some wings or some nachos. There's some hummus, right? There is this currency of food that allows us to sit down, slow down, and actually start to connect with each other. And when I started to talk to restaurateurs and realized that at the heart of most of them that I was talking to, that they were paying attention, not just running a business and being an entrepreneur, their own dream to own their own business. And they weren't just paying attention to this particular mixture of ingredients, but they also had this attentiveness that I had this whole time, which was, hey, food brings people together. At its best, food brings people together. There are a few things. You can go to a concert. I love to go to concerts. Take me to Bonnaroo. I love to see how one band can bring 80,000 people together and we can all sing along and all jump at the same time. It's amazing, right? Some people hate crowds. Put me right in the middle of a crowd, and I love it. And I think what I love is that shared experience that transcends all of our differences, because they don't matter, because all that matters is we all know the words and we're all jumping and we're ecstatic for the shared experience. That is amazing in a world that's disconnected. And so music does that. Sometimes sports, at least for the team you're cheering for, can do that when you're all together in the stadium. When my Eagles won the Super Bowl and I'm standing there with tears coming down my face because
everybody's your best friend. Everybody's your
we're
people.
All hugging and there's champagne and my buddy Jimmy from Philly's there and we're just having, right? You have this shared experience that transcends anything that might be different about you. That's magical. Well, food is one of those things that you can cross borders and language. It doesn't matter religion. I think it's maybe the purest thing that you can put on a table to bring people together, that despite whatever their differences are, it can be a uniting factor. It's also just soothing. It's also amazing when you're not feeling great to have a bowl of soup and what a kind gesture that is to another person. So I think there's so much opportunity to not just to bring intention into food. Intention, to your point, which is I chose to make it from scratch. I chose to do it with ingredients that bring the most flavor and nutrition, and the intentionality of I actually made this with love.
100%.
Because I actually want you to walk out of here feeling more lifted and light and full, dare I say, loved before you leave. And when you bring that kind of intentionality to your work, it does good things to you and to the world around you.
Yeah. It's funny if you're cooking up fish sticks and mac and cheese every night for your family, like, on the one hand, you are filling your bellies. Like, you might be grumpy and then you have the food and then you're not grumpy because you're food. But I mean, your kids can't ask you, hey, how did you make this? Like, what did you do other than pop it in the oven? Where, when I make a home cooked meal for my kids, they can ask, last night I roasted some vegetables and we're kind of big coconut oil fans, but I switched and did some olive oil. And she tasted it, and she even said, like, "Hey, you used olive oil tonight," and that's a weird thing because we use coconut oil for everything, and that can't happen if you're not putting that intention and that like love into the food that you're making, right? I had this wild, you were talking about all these differences and how they disappear around food. I've had this vision about how, I can get, just like the best of them, I can get caught up in these like Twitter, conversations about this, that, and the other with people that I don't agree with. And I have grown a lot, but I'm not the best. I still get in fights and arguments and I shouldn't be. And I have this I've literally had this vision before in my head where we just build the biggest fucking table you've ever seen all the way across the United States, and everybody sits down, your political, and I'm using air quotes, political opponent across from you, right? On the one side, it's all the people that you think you disagree with. Line the table up with the best food there is. I guarantee you the political climate would change overnight.
Love it.
It can't be the same. After you have that meal and you realize that Joe Smith, the buddy that you think you don't like because he voted this way or does this thing or shoots animals and you're a vegetarian, like after you have a meal and you talk about your kids and school and sports and the neighbor's dog that keeps crapping in your yard, like when you start having those conversations, you talk about like, oh, we went on vacation here. Oh, we went on vacation there. Everything. It doesn't go away. You still have these differences. We don't act like they don't exist anymore.
Sure.
But the discourse fundamentally changes after you have that meal with the person that you
instead
think.
of building a wall, we should build a community table.
Have you seen this? I'll
west.
send this to you. There's an artist who his art installation was he did a table on both sides of the existing border fence, right? It's not a wall, but the border fence. So he built it on both sides. And on the one side, they were Mexicans that sat down and they did like a potluck, and on the other side, Americans, right? So it looks like if you do like an aerial shot, it's them having this meal at a big long table, 50 feet long.
That's awesome.
But they're separated by this fence, right?
Right.
But that's still a beautiful picture of like what would it be? What could it be if we just took down this fence? And now we're all mingling with each other because we're all humans at the end of the day. Okay, we are 47 minutes in. We are getting to Tzatziki's now because I want to talk about 2 years ago, 2-ish years ago, you became the CEO of Tzatziki's, right?
Correct.
Okay. Tzatziki's, I love Tzatziki's. I didn't know about it until, because we're not from the South. We moved here 2 years ago. My first Tzatziki's experience was here in Nashville, the one in the Gulch,
right?
And loved it. I mean, I'm a huge, diehard Mediterranean food fan. It's really good actually we're vegetarian. We've been for 5-6 years, almost vegan, but can't quite get there just yet with, just little kids and cheese, occasional cheese and all that stuff. But Mediterranean food is always vegan, vegetarian friendly. So I was having a meeting in the Gulch, went there, loved it, and have been going back ever since. And so tell me about Tzatziki's. Almost 100 locations, 17 states. This is a big thing. Until I met with Amy, one of your teammates, a couple weeks ago, I thought it was like a Nashville establishment. I just hadn't looked into it as much. I was just enjoying the food, and I'd never seen it anywhere else. So I was like, oh, this is like a Nashville thing. And I thought maybe a dozen locations or whatever. And then she said, no, we're everywhere. And we're growing, and it's amazing. And I got more into the business talk with her. And so tell us about this fast casual Mediterranean cafe. How did you get to become a part of it, the CEO, not just a part of it, but like you're kind of running the whole thing. Tell me about it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, you did a great job already. Great commercial.
Perfect. I said I do that sometimes. I'm like, tell me about it, and then I start talking about it. But whenever I left, please
take you on the road.
Talk to us
That's
about
good.
I'm in.
So, I mean, the story really starts. Keith and Amy Richards live in Birmingham, Alabama, and they took a trip to Greece in 1997, and it was a romantic getaway. And while there, they stumble upon this cafe a few nights into their vacation, and they're welcomed in by this couple who, welcome them like family. 3 hours go past. They've had this amazing, colorful food. Mediterranean food is very colorful, fresh, very plant-based, and, glass of wine. But more than that is how they feel. They feel connected and to each other and to the people in the restaurant, and they walk out like, that was amazing. Well, they loved it so much they went back to the same place every night for the rest of their vacation. On the flight back to the States, they said, I don't know exactly how to describe what just happened, but that's what we want to do with the rest of our life. And they had this clear sense of vocation to say, let's import the healthy food of the Mediterranean, but also the Mediterranean lifestyle. And maybe deeper than that was that connectivity, that human connection that they experienced. And they said, let's see if we can recreate that. So the first Tzatziki's was born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1998 at the Colonnade. And like many other entrepreneurial stories, the family pulls together $50,000 and
friends and family around
painting and they open this little tiny restaurant and it boom takes off.
Called Tzatziki's from day one.
Yeah, called Tzatziki's. And it worked because of the same ingredients, right? It was the healthy, fresh, colorful food made from scratch every day, really intentional ingredients. But it also worked because Keith and Amy emulated that sort of Greek man and woman at the door that welcomed them in Greece. They did the same thing. They were involved in the community, in the local, churches and schools and firehouses and police stations and the local businesses. They were involved in their community, and they set tzatziki's as a table for the community to come together around. In fact, every tzatziki's from the beginning has a community table that we talked about earlier, and it's intended to say, "Come, sit next to strangers, sit next to someone with a different religion or a different accent than you, someone that goes to a different school or a different church, and have communion with each other around this bread and this hummus, and see what happens in the community when we gather around food." So they did that, and cut to years later, one of their customers ended up being the son of Mike Bodnar that I mentioned earlier, and they were at the time starting to help young restaurateurs along the way. And so this group, Fresh Hospitality, which is again this incubator for young restaurateurs, ended up making an investment in helping Keith and Amy Richards with their restaurant. So fast forward a bunch of years, they start to add some tzatziki's in around the country in different places. Again, kind of friends and family, and they make the decision that, hey, let's empower other entrepreneurs to bring the Mediterranean, the taste of the Mediterranean, to their communities. So adopted this idea of local ownership, aka a franchise model. If you're scared of it or don't like it, it's empowering someone who has a dream of running their own restaurant with basically the recipes and the support to do it. And that's at our best what we do. We empower people to launch a dream of bringing this flavor to
small
their
businesses
community.
fall flat on their face every single day.
Yeah.
And franchise businesses overwhelmingly succeed.
Yeah.
Because it's a proven model, 100%. Yeah.
So and we fundamentally, the reason I said about the Greek man and woman at the door, we fundamentally believe in that locally owned and operated model, that versus us operating them from afar. And it's just central to who we are. The other thing is really key is that from the beginning, Keith is, and I would say, a big-hearted foodie, great in the kitchen. But the thing I love about Keith the most is his big heart. So, if there was a fire, he realized, at not that much cost, he could put together some signature pasta and bring some comfort to the family that lost, or the firefighters that bravely ran into the fire. And either way, there was a way to be a part of that experience and serve the community in that way. Also, when approached with this opportunity, realize there's members of every community that get left out. And one of those members are special needs youth. They're often ostracized and not very employable. They have limited opportunities. And so they created this amazing program called HOPE, which is Herbs Offering Personal Enrichment. And this idea is, how about we help them with the seeding, watering, harvesting of herbs that we use in our restaurants. We buy them from them so they have a job, and we use the herbs in our restaurant. And so we have this program across tzatziki's today, and our goal has been to hire at least one special needs person in every one of our restaurants. And we would put that challenge out to all restaurants.
Yeah.
There's about maybe 1 million restaurant establishments if you add them all up. What if every restaurateur hired one special needs youth, gave them an opportunity to work? They will bring so much joy and love into your restaurant experience for your staff and for your guests. It would give them a job. So we're really passionate about that being part of what we do. So anyway, as I mentioned before, my foray into this is going from technology, ended up building the technology that Fresh Hospitality and tzatziki's adopted. I worked a little bit in the fresh hospitality space and kind of doing the Shark Tank of finding the new restaurateurs. Became a tzatziki's franchisee was the next step of my journey.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so that's when I really got to know Keith and the rest of the tzatziki's family. And then the board invited me to become the chief innovation officer. And the key there was the brand was about to turn 20. The founder, Keith, is still very involved with the culinary side and the heart of the brand, but they really wanted to formulate, how do we innovate this brand to stay relevant for the next 20 years? Well, I've been a startup guy and an entrepreneur and been involved in all these things, been working in technology, share a big heart with Keith. So we came together and formed a team and said, let's go work on this. And so we worked on, a cultural renewal, really looking at who are we as a brand? What are the things that we want to be? Who are the kind of people we want to hire to live this out? Brand refresh, a new store design that is a little younger and brighter, new technology. And then started working on a 5-year plan. And then the board surprised me when they said, we found it. We found our CEO of the future. I said, great, can't wait to meet him. And they said, it's you. And they invited me to stick around and help execute this plan that we had formulated together.
Wow. That had to have been a very surprising turn of events, because you signed on for, first franchisee, then CIO,
Yep.
and then they wanted to give you the big gig.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So how have you, a couple questions about Taziki's. It's a very intentional place. The food is prepped daily before the restaurant opens. Everything's cut. Everything's, all the vegetables are cut and diced. Everything's prepared. You're not taking out frozen bags from the freezer. The kind of Burger King franchise model where everything's frozen. Everything just makes sense for, like, you don't have to be, I think, that accomplished of a person, like, figure out that system, right? And we also know, I think some of the you alluded to it earlier, like, some of the reason that I think people look down on a franchise model is because you walk into one Subway and it's like tip-top shape, and then you walk into another one and you're like, holy shit, like, I can't eat in here. Like, they should fail, So how do you keep that from happening? Because I've been in several Tazikis now. Everything is excellent. The people that serve me food, the food, everything is, and I imagine that's happening in 92 locations or 93, however many restaurants there. How do you keep that across all of your restaurants, because these are operators that may be in this for the money, maybe in this to create another amazing restaurant. I don't know. How do you do that?
Yeah. So first thing starts with finding the right partners. And so along the way, it's recognizing that every new franchisee is really a partner that we're going to have for many, many years into the future. So finding people that really align with our brand values first before our business model. And,
Got it. Yeah.
And so that's the key thing. And then after that, it's use some of the technology and systems to put in place. So for instance, like, all of our recipes, which are perfected by Keith and Raul, his team on the culinary R&D side, those are all then digitized into digital recipe screens. And so every day, not only are we starting with raw materials, vegetables, produce, leg of lamb, et cetera, we're then following these recipes to a spec. And so therefore, it's being executed the same way in every single restaurant. And so we say, kind of live by the checklist, die by the checklist. The way you achieve excellence is through habit. And we make it habit easy by making it very very orderly and systematizing those. So that's how you take essentially what was in Keith's, the founder's sort of head and heart, and then how do you make that into a system, right? So that's the idea. You don't have to have a Keith in every single market, in every single city. What you need to have is that people that share the same values and they're disciplined to follow the Taziki's way. And then we give them systems so it's easy to follow the Taziki's way. So that's how you create standardization and maintain your excellence. And I would say, a few things to give a damn about that are worth giving a damn about. One of them is supply chain. Not a real sexy word, but one of the things I'm really excited about now, because we've been on a campaign that's really emphasizing the farmers behind our food. So I can tell you it's all made from scratch. What does that mean? And Panera can say it's all clean. But what are we talking about here?
Yep.
What it means is that it all starts with the farmers that are in the field, or the bakers, or whether our lamb farmers, one of the Dane family in central Michigan, or the dairy farmers in Monroe County in Wisconsin. We've been in the last year going out to meet them, invite them in to speak at our conference and tell their stories. These are people that this is what their passion is, and they're sometimes invisible. We went to go visit them, and a lot of times they're moved deeply, tears in their eyes, because they've never met the last mile. They've never seen where the sweat of their brow goes. And so we've been trying to honor who are these farmers. I think you're going to see transparency, traceability in the upcoming years just increase dramatically. We're going to be able to know, this salmon at Taziki's on top of our med salad, which is amazing. If you haven't had Mediterranean salad with salmon, you're really missing out on one of the best things you could ever eat. But like knowing that it was caught here by this fisherman, and let's honor the place and the person. And so, our baker for our pita, Naji, one of the most big-hearted people you'll ever meet in your life. He's from the Mediterranean. He's Lebanese, and he's not just baking bread for a profit for us. He would say, breaking bread is sacred, and he puts that intention into every piece of pita that he bakes for us. And so that's the origination of before it even comes to us. So I think paying attention to supply chain, where everything you put on your table, that you put in your body, where does it come from? Ask your kids that question. Start paying attention when you're shopping. at Publix or Whole Foods or wherever, and look at the ingredients, but also the origin, because that's an important thing to give a damn about, to pay attention to, and start then honoring. It's not just an academic process, but honor those people when you drive by a field full of corn, recognize there's a family living there, and you know what? You think it's some big operation. It's probably a mom and dad and their two
Yep.
kids
Yep.
and one helping hand. These are tiny operations that do a tremendous amount of work. Honor the work they do, and how much it brings the harvest to our tables. And then for us, then we want to honor the people that are in our restaurant that take all that. We could do it much easier. We could cut a lot of corners. We could do it processed. We could save a lot on labor.
Yep. Yep.
And help our bottom line. But we have really held to this, ethos of real food. So I think give a damn about the real food movement. When I don't worry about our quote unquote competitors, more air quotes, when they too are holding to the ethic of starting with real ingredients and then making food from scratch. It's not trendy. It's not that it's cool. It's not modern. It's actually old fashioned. It's just the way we should make food.
It's the right thing to do.
It's just the right thing to do. So like anyone that does it that way, I feel kindred with, and I'm not worried if someone says we're competitors. I will stand shoulder to shoulder and say, hey, we're all in this together. There are plenty that have abandoned that. If we want to shine a spotlight on those that are not, let's shine a spotlight there and say, come on, let's get back to, this, even making hamburgers, like you mentioned Burger King, but making hamburgers now when Shake Shack comes along, or Hugh Babies here in Nashville, right? They come along and they take, they take meat and they grind it and they hand patty it and take real potatoes and they hand cut the fries, and we call that trendy and cool. It's just real.
It's real food.
And it's how Wendy's and McDonald's
Used
and
to do
Burger
it.
King all used to do it.
Yep.
And then we get away from it over time for a lot of reasons. So I think just returning to the fundamentals of doing things the real way, real food movement is really key. One thing I just want to mention too is that I'm real passionate about the Farmers Runner food. I'm also really passionate about, we talk about our staff. And, I recognize that, we can make a huge impact in our communities by the people we serve. The other thing I love about the restaurant business is that you can make a huge impact on the people that you hire. You hire people that come for a job.
Yep.
You can sometimes offer them to stay for a career. In our world, like I mentioned, even give them a chance to own their own business. And so that's a path I'm passionate about. And right now it's a challenging, everyone says it, it's almost cliche now, like, oh, the unemployment's really low and it's a really high, difficult hiring market. It's true, but that should inspire us to look with fresh eyes on who are the people that would love to be employed and would love to come work and stay because they want to be part of a family. And what we're finding is there's another amazing opportunity, something else to give a damn about, which is look to the veterans that are coming back and not just need to reacclimate into life. They need an ally and an employer. They need someone to give them a job and to stand by them as they reacclimate. So hiring veterans is something. We just hired a new director of recruitment and a recruitment specialist, and she's real passionate about hiring veterans. And so that's something we're leaning into. I already mentioned special needs. These are biggest, hardest people who are looking for a job, but most people focus on their disabilities instead of their abilities. And something I've become passionate about recently is refugees and immigrants, first-generation Americans. Our restaurants are filled with people that speak different languages and have different colored skins. And we collectively create these families of hardworking people that have worked together for a long time. When I look at some of the opportunities in our country right now, is that people come here that are, when they're first to America, whether they're a refugee, they're fleeing something where they had to leave their home versus someone coming who's an immigrant who is leaving a situation for a better opportunity. In either case, welcoming them in, letting them know that we have a job for them at Tzatziki's, because we really see the value in diversity. We see, and most of our kitchens, we're speaking Spanish more than we're speaking English anyway. And just realize that there's an amazing opportunity for these people that bring the values we say are some of the most important, quote unquote, American values. These are values these people are bringing with them, hardworking, family loving, and want to be part of a fabric of something. And so at Tzatziki's, we are that, and we offer that. And so we see this opportunity for sometimes the people that get overlooked are exactly the people you're looking for, exactly the people that sort of help you live out your best self.
We talked about when you and I hung out last time about how so many of these people end up being also, they've lost so much. And they come from places where they had to work 5, 10, 100, I don't know, a lot harder than we did maybe for the same
Right.
things, right? And so they just show up other employees, right, in terms of their commitment and their dedication. And that's a beautiful thing that, again, sometimes gets overlooked in the name of, oh, they're different, I can't understand them. All the just stupid things that we say, hopefully not we, you and me, but like that society says about these people. They turn out to be just the most beautiful, hardworking, amazing people that really, really, really want to be part of the team, really get in there and show a kind of a deeper level of commitment to the overall goal. And I've worked very closely with all the different kinds of people that you have talked about, right? And especially refugees here in Nashville. I've worked a lot with refugee community here in Nashville. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful people, just amazing people. So I love that you're focused on, yeah, I mean, simply put, it's conscious capitalism. It's also people over profit, like truly. I mean, that's also a kind of a sexy buzzword that the kind of phrase that people talk about. But this is truly evidence of people over profit, right? I know you guys have a meal before the restaurant opens every day, so everybody that's working that day kind of eats together before the store opens up. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
so yeah, there's two different amazing meals that happen. One is, yeah, if you hustle and work hard and you get your prep done by like 15 minutes before we open at 11, there's time then where they'll create a breakfast together and everyone contributes and everyone dines together and then quickly back to the line in time to open the door at 11. It's amazing because
I
you've
love
worked
that.
hard
Yeah. Yeah.
prepping
How
your
many? 3-4
station.
hours?
Yeah, prepping your station all morning and getting ready for the day. The other thing that happens in a lot of our markets we're really excited to see is just on like typically a Saturday morning, there'll be a family meal and someone will open up the restaurant before hours. And it's not just the staff, but now bring your spouses, bring your kids. And there's this
Wow.
broader community of if you spend all day in the kitchen, let's cook together, let's dine together, and get to know each other. The amount of time we spend working together and see the you've heard the names of the kids. Let's see the kids and hear their stories and see their smiling face. But yeah, I mean, I love what you said a minute ago about these things in an interview you're looking for, you're hoping you hire the right person. I mean, come on, for that matter, the things we hope we ourselves experience in our own work. We want to be grateful. We want to work that puts a smile on our face and hopefully
Yep.
puts a smile on someone else's face. And you want to be able to show up and work hard and there to be something it's worthwhile. Your effort is making a difference. And so when someone comes in and they have a smile on their face and they are grateful in their bones because they just spent the last 13 years in a tent and where they were fleeing from their home that they've lost now, and their alternative is to come work a construction job or moving raw chicken. And I'm grateful to all those companies that offer anybody a
Yep. Yeah,
job.
totally.
But sometimes, many times, these people are coming from professional backgrounds, and for us to give them a chance to sort of move into a management position or again an ownership position, even that pathway is amazing. So I look in and say, man, we have so much to learn, and we are bettered by these individuals that again sometimes get left out because they bring so much gratitude and hard work and all the things we really are saying we're looking for. It reminds us to be our best self. So I'm always inspired by them.
What's the big dream, man? Like, what's the big dream for you? What do you? I know you're very excited about the Seekies right now. Your
Yeah.
work with the Seekies, but like, what? Like, remove all the inhibitors and all the doubts that you may have about who you are in your life. Like, what do you want to happen as a CEO, as a father, husband, damn giver, all of that stuff?
Yeah, boy, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm glad I'll start where you ended. So right now I'm married, be 20 years next year, and with
Congrats.
3 kids. My oldest one is about to turn 16. My oldest son driving 16, and then my middle son is about to turn 13, and my daughter is about to turn 10. And being a father is it's amazing to be on the other side of the father son or father child relationship, growing up in a broken home and with a broken relationship with my own dad, and it's so redemptive to be able to do that. So
Beautiful.
my first priority is how do I keep investing in and keep trying in maintaining a marriage that's thriving, and you got to make space for the ups and the downs and the mountaintops that are romantic and exciting, and then the really hard seasons, and just it all belongs, and be patient through that. And then with my kids, maintaining a relationship where it goes from like you're the shepherd and the director of the play, and then now it's like sort of transitioning to a place where you have to back off and be a spectator and someone that cheers and is safe. But now they get, life gets to start teaching them lessons, and our turn of teaching them lessons starts to end. and sort of letting that sort of dance, that choreography sort of happen. And sort of changing roles when I just figured out how to do this is a real challenge right now as my kids become
Sure.
teenagers. So my wife and I staying in solidarity, that takes a lot of headspace, a lot of heart space. That's my biggest sort of vocation, the heartbeat of things. And then I think by proxy, and I love what you're doing with Give a Damn, because being a dad and being married, that means I live in a community. That means I have a neighbor to my right,
Yep.
my left,
Yep.
across and behind. So neighbor love and paying attention. And by proxy, even just that, I'm now a citizen. I'm a part of a community, even if it's just the 4 or 5 of us. But my kids go to schools, and just paying attention to what's going on in their schools, and there's diversity and there's problems and there's needs, and just showing up in their schools in small or big ways. And my wife does an amazing job. And we're both able to volunteer in different ways. And so those concentric circles that you get to build, that going from there to involved in a nonprofit that helps kids in Guatemala City, and taking my kids now on trips there so they can see the contrast of the world they live in versus some other kid's world, and develop empathy and try to pass on some of these things that really my mom passed on to me. And that becomes a big priority with life. And so doing that, and then trying to extend some of that into my work. And like I said, I am passionate, not just that we're in the restaurant business and we are beating the industry trends with traffic's up and sales up, and our initiatives are working. But the bigger initiative is I get to bring my heart into the farmers behind our food, that people side, and also offering jobs to those that get left out. Those elements of living out my heart, and keeping it being a people-centered sort of priority. So I think from here, where that goes, I'm curious too, because my life has been this series of stepping
Sure. Yeah.
stones
It's been wild.
of chasing chasing how do I keep my heart open and alive? How do I make life about people first? And how do I keep investing and adding value? And I'm really excited because I see a good horizon. We just, kicking off this 5-year plan with Taziki's, and I see great opportunity in front of us. I thought about, someday down the road going to teach. I love the opportunity that when their mind and heart is open to be inspired and be challenged. That feels attractive to me someday if I have the opportunity to go teach. But the world is a big place. There's a lot of reasons to give a damn. And so I think I'll keep my eyes open and my heart open, and just see where I can add value.
I love that, because there's a plan there, but the plan is to be open. The plan is to take it a day at a time.
Yeah.
That's really all we can do. I mean, I've got dreams and ambitions and aspirations. And before we started recording, I was telling you about how the last few weeks have been just turning everything upside down for me, because different things that are happening. I got to listen to what life is throwing at me and decipher from there. And if I'm too stuck to my plan,
Yep.
then I'm like, it's not worth it. It doesn't fit in the plan.
It's alchemy, right?
Yep.
Like this idea of, can we trust as we go off and we have dreams? And it's good to, because that means you're paying attention to how am I wired and what am I passionate about, and then ask, what does the world need? But this bigger narrative of over time, can I trust there's a benevolent plot, and I can't screw this up too bad. As long as I keep moving forward,
Yep.
and I keep my heart open and I keep responding to what's in front of me, go on that journey.
Yeah.
And it's bumpy sometimes, and there's right turns and left turns. Don't obsess about the wrong turns. Just keep moving forward. And for me, that has worked, and it's been a pretty fun ride so far.
In the year 2099, you're going to die.
Yes.
I actually don't know when you're going to die, but I'm giving you plenty of time. That'll put you at 120.
More bulletproof coffee. That will
there you go.
it, yeah.
So a long time from now, hopefully,
Right.
I hope, you're going to die, as we all will and must. And for some odd reason, I'm still around, and I get to give your eulogy. So I'm there in front of everybody that loves and appreciates you, family, friends, all the people that you've served and loved throughout your life. And they're all waiting on me to give your eulogy. We're all there to mourn and celebrate your life. In a few sentences, what am I saying on that day?
I hope that you'll have great reason to say that Dan celebrated everybody's moments and truly cared about the people around him, and was paying attention to their lowest moments, and would suffer with them, and their highest moments, the first to open a bottle of champagne and raise a cheers that Dan went on a life journey, but he did it with all the people around him, and again, paid attention to the joy in the journey, the chalice of life that is both sorrow and joy, and could hold both and celebrated both.
I love that. That'd be a beautiful life and legacy, man. I hope you get all that and more.
Thanks.
This has been super fun. Thank you for joining me. Dan Simpson, the father, husband, entrepreneur, Taziki's franchisee turned CEO, and whatever else is in your future. Keep giving a damn. We're excited to keep following your story, keep in touch. And again, thanks for joining me and for sharing so much of your life and vision for life with us today.
It's been great, man.
Now, I know y'all are Googling the Taziki's website right now to see if you have one near you so you can go grab some amazing food. I've eaten there several times in the last few weeks. It's amazing. And if you don't have one nearby, well, consider moving. Nah, don't do that. Maybe there will be one near you soon enough because, again, they are growing like crazy. I hope you're encouraged by Dan's life, his experiences, his work, and the ways he and his company are giving a damn. If you have any questions or thoughts from this conversation or about this conversation, I'm always available to chat on social media at Nick Lapara or at Let's Give a Damn, or shoot me an email, always, hello@letsgiveadamn.com. You can find links and more information about Dan Simpson, Taziki's, and all things Let's Give a Damn by going to letsgiveadamn.com. If you love what we're doing, friends, please tell a friend. Leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or consider giving us a few dollars each month to support the production of this show by going to patreon.com/letsgiveadamn right now. Once again, thanks to the Russell in Nashville, Tennessee for letting us use their studio to record this conversation. This podcast episode was created by Chad Snavely and yours truly. The music is by our friend and podcast guest alum Propaganda. Until next week, love y'all. Peace.